According to a new report, Sony and Marvel have already cast the live-action Miles Morales. And I've got a pretty sweet theory as to how this could all go down. What's up, everybody? It's Josh. Welcome back to the channel. Smash that like button and let's get right into this video. I do want to talk about the new report coming in from Jeremy Conrad over at MCU Cosmic, talking about how Sony and Marvel have already cast the live-action Miles Morales. And then I want to speculate about what I think would be super cool for Sony and Marvel to do with the Miles Morales character, considering some of the other rumors and reports that we have been hearing about this crazy live-action Spider-Verse multiverse thing. So let's check this out. I'm over on MCU Cosmic. Says rumor Miles Morales is heading to the MCU. And the most important part of the article here says, I have a source who's reliably told me some things on the DC side of the fence, most recently about the Peacekeeper series back in July. And they told me in the past week that Sony and Marvel have already found their live action Miles Morales. I have no idea who it could be or even if it's for Spider-Man 3, but that would make the most sense. Now, before we move on, I did want to mention that I found it interesting that Jeremy reported that Sony and Marvel found the live-action Spider-Verse. To me, that sort of hints that there's a big-time working relationship between Sony and Marvel, perhaps even beyond Spider-Man 3. As Jeremy notes in his article, he doesn't know if this live-action Miles Morales is for Spider-Man 3, so if Sony and Marvel are working together to cast a live-action Miles, and it's not going to be for Spider-Man 3, then they are working together for a bunch of other stuff, which again is something that we've been hinting at here at the channel, we've been talking about. Really looks like Sony and Marvel have got their beef completely figured out. Okay, so now let's consider some of the other rumors that we've been talking about. Mostly all the reports and rumors that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are coming back to be the live action Spider-Verse people for whatever Sony and Marvel is planning, okay? And at this point, you know, there's so many characters coming in Spider-Man 3 that it's sort of hard to keep track of, and I think a lot of people are wondering, like, what kind of movie is this even going to be, right? And I think it would make sense if a lot of the cool cameos we're hearing about will actually be sort of cameos or maybe supporting roles or something, like smaller roles. They're not going to be the big players in the film. However, Doctor Strange is going to be, and obviously Tom Holland's Spider-Man is going to be a big player. We think Kraven and Green Goblin will also be big players, but there'll be a lot of other players as well. And what I would absolutely love to see, and I've been talking about this over on the morning streams for a couple of days now, and that would be Donald Glover cast as an older Miles Morales, and I would do that character side by side with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. I would sort of jump ahead in the Tobey Maguire timeline to a time where he would have met Miles Morales, you know, trained Miles Morales, and then those two were sort of Spider-Men together, more like the Bat family kind of thing going on there, and I think that would be fantastic. Now, one of the reasons I think this would be so cool is because Donald Glover actually went out for the Spider-Man role, but he didn't go out for the Miles Morales character. He showed up to be Peter Parker, and this was actually at a time before Miles Morales had even been created. And some people say that Brian Michael Bendis and Sarah Pichelli, when they created the Miles Morales character, that Donald Glover showing up for the casting of Peter Parker was a big reason as to why they made Miles black and decided to make a black Spider-Man. Now, that's one reason that this could be really cool, but another reason that this would be awesome is because it would allow the Tom Holland Spider-Man to see what a different version of himself is like, and him having that friendship and that mentorship for Miles Morales. Okay, and this solves a number of different points, but I actually want to first parallel this to another interesting pop culture situation that's similar, and that would be the J.J. Abrams Star Trek. You see, it is really interesting when young Kirk meets the older Spock, and he gets to hear from the older Spock that he and James Kirk from his timeline become literally the best of friends. They are best friends, and it's an interesting dynamic then when we see Spock, or rather when we see Kirk go back to his Spock with the understanding that they are going to be friends. And the reason I like this so much, not just because it's so freaking cool, but because it could solve some of the problems with a younger Miles coming into the MCU, and that is that Peter himself is still really young. And if they want to bring Miles Morales into the MCU ASAP, he's going to be young, but Peter is technically going to be too young for the mentorship thing to exactly make sense. But if we see a different version of Peter that is really good friends with an older Miles, and we get to see their dynamic, and maybe young Peter gets to talk to older Miles about the relationship he has with his Peter, very similar to the Star Trek thing I was just talking about, to me, that can then give Peter this kind of perspective that he would need to then mentor a younger Miles Morales back in the MCU. And yes, what I'm literally saying is that they will cast not one, but two Miles Morales, and we can have an older Miles in the Spider-Verse with Tobey, which I don't think is a really permanent thing. I don't think Tobey's going to be around for like 6 more movies. I think maybe 2 to 3, 4 movies max for Tobey, and they're going to have to pay him a ton, right? But either way, whatever happens with that character and with Miles in that universe, it's going to help make the other Miles make more sense in the MCU. And another reason why this is so cool is because this would be very different than the Miles Morales story that we got in Marvel Comics with the Spider-Man crossover that then gets adapted into the animated version of the Spider-Verse. The relationship that Miles has with Peter Parker from the comics is very different than the one I'm describing with Tobey and Miles, because in the comics and in the Spider-Verse movie, the Peter Parker that is native to Miles's universe, he is the person that dies. That Peter Parker becomes the Uncle Ben for that Miles. And I'm not saying they couldn't do that again in live action, but to me, that wouldn't be interesting. I want to see a different version of Miles Morales, but something that still makes the two of them very close friends. And, you know, obviously Peter is a mentor to him, etc., etc. And I know some people are like, oh, but Donald Glover's already the Prowler in the 616 universe. I'm like, yeah, that's totally true. But we already have actors that are playing multiple characters in the MCU. Jenna Chan is one, and if you count the Netflix shows, Mahershala Ali is about to be one, okay? So we've already done this before, and I think we could be casting characters again. Like, I actually do still believe that Carl Urban could still be Wolverine. He could still be Logan, even though he was the Destroyer or whatever his name was in Thor Ragnarok, right? And besides that, you could have that character, like Donald Glover could look very different than he looked when he was the Prowler in the MCU. And you could still technically have him be the Prowler in the MCU. Like, he can literally do both. And again, I think this would just be so cool because Donald Glover, he can't really be Miles in the MCU now. He's just too old, which is probably why they cast him as the Prowler anyways. And he's not going to sign a big contract and play Miles Morales for a long, long time. But this multiverse thing gives us the chance to do this. And guys, just like what they are doing with the Iron Man character, where they're grabbing Tom Cruise, who was going to be Iron Man originally cast, right? Just like they're grabbing John Krasinski, who was very close to being Captain America. Why not grab someone that was very close to being Spider-Man and do the same kind of a thing? I think this would frankly be awesome. I wouldn't be surprised if Feige is having very similar ideas, being a big sweaty himself. And so that's the theory, guys. It is based on some actual reports and some rumors that are going on for Spider-Man 3. But either way, man, I'm very excited for what Sony and Marvel has cooking up for us. And I leave the question off to you guys. What do you think about this theory I had? Would you be down with Donald Glover being an older Miles Morales and then having a younger one pop up in the MCU later on? How would you feel about that? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And now let's shout out Juan Guzman. Yes, indeed, it was Penny Parker in Into the Spider-Verse that had the robot. And now let's ask another nerd card question before we get out of here. I want to know who makes the web shooters for Miles Morales in the Ultimate Marvel Comics. If you like this video, make sure you drop a like on it. And if you're not subscribed to this channel, what are you thinking? You've got to subscribe so you don't miss any videos. If you're enjoying the content over here, you will absolutely love the live streams we do straight from Nerd Vengers Tower Monday through Friday, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.